The city looks beautiful at a distance, but up close, it is a battlefield, a place where dreams disappear in quiet corners and hope bleeds in silence. And on one cold night, while everyone pretended to be fine, there was someone walking the streets who was not running from danger. He was walking straight into destiny without even realizing it. His life did not look holy. His journey did not look perfect. It looked like a case file, scattered pieces, unanswered questions, silent pain, hidden fears, and the feeling that something bigger than him was watching everything, like an unseen investigator, following every move, every thought, every breath. He always believed life should make sense, but instead it turned into a mystery full of wrong turns, hard choices and scars that no one could see. The world around him was loud, opinions everywhere, expectations everywhere, pressure everywhere, and yet deep inside his soul, there was something still and unbroken, a voice that never shouted, but never left a presence, that did not scare him, but refused to let him quit. People around him thought he was just surviving, but heaven was building a case around him, gathering proof that he was not lost. He was being guided. This story is not about someone perfect. This is about someone real, someone who has been hurt, betrayed, misunderstood, someone who stood in crowded places and still felt alone, someone who has cried without witnesses and smiled without strength, someone who has been close to giving up but never did. And the reason he never did was something he could not explain, something unseen, something holy, something powerful, like an invisible force, keeping him on a path he could not fully understand, but somehow always felt. The city kept moving, lights flashing, sirens echoing, conversations fading in and out. Yet his journey was not about the noise outside. It was about the storm. Inside, a storm that never destroyed him, even when it had the power to. And that is when the real mystery began. Because when a person should break, and they do not break, when a person should fall apart, and they stand when a person should give up, but keeps going, that is not random, that is not accident, that is not coincidence, that is evidence something divine is at work, even when life feels like a crime scene. There were moments when fear tried to control him, moments when sadness tried to drown him, moments when loneliness tried to swallow him, but something kept pulling him forward. Not softly, not gently, but firmly, like a higher court, refusing to let him lose his case. There were days he felt forgotten, but every time darkness tried to win, something bright appeared. Sometimes it was peace, sometimes it was unexpected help. Sometimes it was strength that came out of nowhere. Sometimes it was a reminder in his heart that he was not wandering, he was being watched, protected, carried. He walked through heartbreak and did not turn bitter. He walked through disappointment and did not lose hope. He walked through seasons of silence and still believed something good was coming. This is not weakness. This is alignment. This is what happens when someone is exactly where heaven needs them to be. Even if the world does not understand it, he did not feel safe all the time. He did not feel comfortable all the time. But deep inside, he felt covered, like someone above him had already studied every danger, planned every escape, wrote every chapter, and decided this story is not ending in defeat. Little by little, strange things began to happen. Not loud miracles, not dramatic explosions of change, but quiet shifts, subtle turns, opportunities appearing without force, conversations happening at the exact right time, doors gently unlocking without him pushing them, moments where he realized he did not have to chase anything because what was meant for him kept finding him. Effort was still required, but striving was gone. He was working, but not begging, moving, but not panicking, surviving, but also becoming something stronger, something wiser, something more anchored, and while life kept hitting him, life also kept shaping him. His reactions changed, his heart softened, his thoughts grew clearer, his soul matured. He was not becoming harder, he was becoming deeper. He was not becoming cold, he was becoming steady. Even his silence started speaking louder than his words, and without trying, he began to affect people around him. His strength made them question their own fear. His peace made them wonder. His endurance made them believe. Again, people could feel something different in him. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. Like light that never shouts, yet still exposes darkness. He was never alone. Help kept arriving in ways that made no logical sense. Strength when exhaustion should have crushed him. Peace when chaos tried to swallow him. Support from unexpected places. Encouragement exactly when his spirit was running out of breath, like the universe itself refused to let him collapse. And if someone ever tried to explain it, they could not, because this kind of survival is not normal. This kind of hope is not natural. This kind of endurance is not human. It is funded by heaven, sustained by purpose, protected by something sacred. And even when he tried to walk away, even when he thought quitting would be easier, even when he wanted silence instead of calling something inside him, burned too strongly to extinguish. It was not career. It was not hobby. It was not accidental passion. It was a fire living in his bones, something holy that refused to let him return to small, safe, ordinary life. Because once your soul has tasted purpose, normal life is no longer enough. So here he stands in a restless city that looks like danger, but is actually destiny, surrounded by shadows, but covered by something greater, misunderstood by people, but deeply understood by heaven. His life may look complicated, but it is positioned. His journey may look uncertain, but it is guided. His heart may still carry scars, but it also carries calling. And the story is far from over. It is only getting deeper, only getting clearer, only getting stronger. And whether the world knows it or not, he is not wandering. He is exactly where he is meant to be. The city kept breathing like a living creature, restless, unpredictable, alive with secrets hidden in every corner. And while the world slept, destinies were still moving quietly, like shadows that never rest. He kept walking through his journey, not with certainty, but with something deeper than certainty, something like conviction planted in his soul. And the farther he went, the clearer it became that his story was not random. Every event, every delay, every heartbreak, every unanswered question was a clue, building towards something larger than he could yet see. There were moments that felt like being interrogated by life itself, as if every pain, every doubt, every memory stood across the table staring at him, asking, "Why are you still standing?" And yet he stayed. He endured because something invisible refused to release him. He carried scars, yes, but they became evidence not of defeat, but of survival, the kind of survival that is not loud, but unbreakable. He remembered nights when silence was so loud, it felt like the walls could hear his thoughts. Nights when fear whispered that he was alone, forgotten, abandoned. But each time, just when despair was ready to win, something powerful stepped in. Maybe a peaceful thought, maybe a memory of strength, maybe a sudden assurance inside that said, "You are not done yet." And that mysterious strength kept proving over and over that he was not walking through chaos. He was walking through purpose, disguised as chaos. People around him saw only fragments. They saw a man walking through life, But heaven saw a warrior finishing an assignment. Whether he liked it or not, he was chosen not because he was perfect, but because he was willing to keep going when most people collapse. That willingness itself became his greatest weapon, like a heartbeat refusing to stop even under pressure. And slowly his journey started to feel less like a crime story of fear and more like a divine investigation, revealing truth about who he really was and why he had to go through everything he did. He began to learn something powerful, that destiny is not comfortable. Destiny is demanding. Destiny requires sacrifice, patience, resilience, and a spirit that refuses to surrender, even when surrender looks easier. There were times he questioned everything. Why certain people left, why certain doors never opened, why certain prayers were answered with silence. But in those doubts, he kept walking. And as he walked, the truth revealed itself, step by step, slow but undeniable, like streetlights turning on, one after another, in a dark street, guiding the way without shouting, only shining. Sometimes the hardest part was not the battles he fought outside, but the battles inside his own soul, choosing to forgive when anger wanted revenge, choosing to trust when disappointment wanted to harden his heart, choosing to love when betrayal tried to poison him, choosing to keep faith when logic said it was pointless. These were not small decisions. These were wars fought in silence, wars no one else saw but heaven. Recorded every victory, every tear, every moment he chose light instead of darkness. And those unseen victories were building a strength inside him that even he did not fully understand. Yet people came and people left. Some stayed long enough to support him. Some stayed long enough to wound him. Some stayed just to watch him struggle, but none of them defined him. Each season shaped him like evidence, shaping a final verdict. And the verdict was this: he was never alone. He was never forgotten. He was never without purpose. Even when his life looked like an unresolved case file, something holy was working behind everything, stitching broken moments into a meaningful story. There came a point where he looked back, not with regret, but with realization. He saw how every wrong turn led him to the right direction, how every delay protected him from something hidden, how every loss prepared space for something better. Every closed chapter was not rejection, it was redirection. Every unanswered moment was protection disguised as silence. And suddenly, he understood that he was not just surviving, he was being prepared for something greater than survival, something eternal, something meaningful enough to justify every tear he ever shed. And with that understanding came authority, not the kind that demands respect, but the kind that earns it, the kind that comes from walking through storms and still standing, the kind that comes from fighting internal battles and winning without applause. People began to sense something stronger in him, something steady, something unshakable, and without trying, he became a light, not loud, not flashy, but consistent, something people could trust, something real. Because truth is, people are not drawn to perfect lives. They are drawn to real lives, to scars that healed, to souls that refused to break. And he had become exactly that. Provision never stopped coming, sometimes late in human timing, but always right in divine timing. Strength arrived when it was most needed. Clarity appeared when confusion tried to suffocate him. Solutions came from unexpected places, like unseen hands, adjusting every detail of his life, and it became impossible to call it coincidence anymore. This was guidance, this was covering, this was purpose, taking care of its carrier like heaven, investing in its own plan, ensuring he had everything required to keep moving. There were still days he wanted to walk away, Still days when the burden felt heavy still. Days when he wished life could be simple, quiet, ordinary, but each time he tried to step back, something inside him burned too fiercely to ignore. It was not pressure, it was calling, not fear, but fire, not obligation, but destiny living inside his bones, reminding him that once a soul has seen its purpose, it can never return to smallness. And he had seen too much, felt too much, learned too much to go back to who he once was. So he kept moving, not as a victim, not as a lost wanderer, but as someone aware now, aware that every moment had meaning, every struggle had purpose, every delay had design, aware that he was not trapped. He was positioned, not overlooked. He was chosen, not drifting, he was guided. His life was no longer a confusing mystery. It was a divine narrative unfolding at the perfect pace, written by hands wiser than his own. And even if others did not understand it, their understanding was never required. This story was between him and heaven. Now when the city lights glow and the world continues pretending everything is fine, he walks differently, he breathes differently, he lives differently because he knows something most people do not know. He knows that even in the hardest seasons, something sacred is working, something unseen, is protecting something eternal, is shaping him. And as long as that fire lives inside him, as long as that peace stays anchored, as long as that quiet voice keeps guiding, he will keep going, because this is not just life. This is calling, this is destiny, and he is not wandering, he is exactly where he is meant to be. And his story is still unfolding, stronger, deeper, holier than ever, and nothing in this world can stop what heaven has already written. The world around him continued moving like a restless machine. Everyone chasing something, everyone hiding something, everyone pretending they had everything under control while quietly falling apart inside. But he was no longer pretending. He had reached a place where honesty with himself mattered more than image, where truth mattered more than comfort, where purpose mattered more than applause. And that shift changed everything. The story that once felt like chaos now felt like a carefully crafted investigation, led by hands unseen, deeply intentional, endlessly patient, shaping him like evidence gathered for a final revelation. There were days when the weight of everything he carried pressed against his chest like a silent interrogation room, where no voice spoke, yet questions filled the air, questions about who he really was, why he had to endure so much, why he could not simply live a normal, quiet existence. But instead of breaking under the pressure, he found something surprising rising inside: strength, not born from pride, but from surrender, courage, not born from stubbornness, but from faith, clarity, not born from logic, but from trust. And with every passing moment, that quiet inner resilience became more real, more grounded, more unshakable. He had learned to walk through darkness without panicking, to face uncertainty, without losing peace, to confront pain, without becoming bitter. And this was not accidental training. This was preparation. Like someone far greater than him had been building his soul for something beyond temporary success, beyond shallow recognition, beyond ordinary life. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every lonely night had not weakened him. They had sharpened him, refined him, sculpted him into someone who could carry responsibility without losing himself, who could hold power without forgetting humility, who could stand in storms without collapsing. The city around him still carried danger, still whispered lies, still tried to distract people with noise and illusions, but he had developed a different kind of awareness. He saw through the fog. He sensed deeper realities beneath surface appearances. He understood, now, that some doors closing had saved his life, that some people leaving protected his destiny, that some losses were not losses at all, they were divine redirections. His story was not a tragedy. His story was strategy, designed carefully by a mind far wiser than his own. There were still silent battles, yes, battles no one applauded, battles no one photographed, battles no one posted about. But those unseen battles were the real turning points, the moments where he chose hope, when fear demanded surrender, the moments where he chose patience when frustration screamed, the moments where he chose integrity when compromise seemed easier. Those choices built spiritual muscle, they built backbone, they built depth, and as time passed, those quiet victories shaped him into someone different. Someone rare, someone whose strength did not come from fame, but from fire survived. People around him kept noticing something they could not fully explain. They saw calm where panic should exist. They saw confidence without arrogance. They saw depth without bitterness. And even those who once doubted him now watched quietly, curious, wondering how someone could endure so much and still glow with a light that was steady, gentle, unapologetically real. But he knew the truth. It was never his strength. It was never his brilliance. It was never his ability. It was grace. It was covering. It was purpose, supplying power at every step. Help kept showing up in ways beyond logic, like answers appearing the exact moment they were needed, like emotional oxygen arriving whenever his soul felt suffocated, like invisible hands holding pieces of his life together when everything threatened to fall apart. And each time it happened, he understood more deeply that he was not carrying his story alone. Something sacred carried it with him, something bigger than fear, bigger than failure, bigger than time itself. He still had moments of weariness, moments where the path felt long, where the weight felt real, but even in those moments, quitting was never an option because something inside him burned too fiercely to extinguish. It was like fire, quietly alive inside his ribs, like purpose, breathing inside his bones, like destiny, refusing to release its grip. And the more he tried to push it away, the stronger it reminded him that he was created for something beyond comfort, beyond mediocrity, beyond safe existence. He was created to live fully, to impact deeply, to walk boldly in the life assigned to him. So he kept moving with steady determination, like a character in a case file, refusing to disappear, like a witness who has finally seen truth clearly enough to stand by it without fear. He no longer doubted the path ahead, even when he could not see it completely, because now he knew something most people never learn. He knew that storms do not always mean destruction. Sometimes they mean direction. He knew that loneliness does not always mean abandonment. Sometimes it means protection. He knew that silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes it means preparation. He walked forward, not as a victim of circumstances, but as someone trusted with a divine story. Someone chosen to carry weight, because his shoulders had been trained to hold it. Someone trusted to stand firm, because his soul had learned how not to break. His journey was no longer about surviving. It was about fulfilling something sacred, something eternal, something deeply intentional. And now, whenever the night grows heavy, whenever the world tries to scare him with uncertainty, whenever fear tries to whisper old lies, he remembers how far he has come. He remembers every season he thought would destroy him, that instead transformed him. He remembers every room he entered, trembling, but walked out stronger. He remembers every tear that watered, strength he did not yet know he had, and with that remembrance comes confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet, steady-rooted confidence that nothing in this world can stop what heaven has already written. So he keeps walking through the city, through challenges, through unknown turns. But now he walks with assurance, with quiet boldness, with faith carved into his bones. He is no longer asking whether he is lost, because deep inside he knows the truth. He is not lost. He is led. He is not forgotten. He is chosen. He is not wandering. He is exactly where he is meant to be. And his story continues unfolding, deeper, stronger, brighter, and unstoppable, because it is not just his story anymore. It is a divine narrative still being written with purpose